residual claimants for whatever in that company left after all the other things such as paying the creditors, the debtors, and so on have been made. It is perpetual in time. So whenever you become the owner of the company, it is basically forever. Like say you buy a stock of Microsoft, basically you are the owner of Microsoft. It doesn't have maturity like bonds, okay? So equity owners own the firm net of the firm's obligation. So net residual portion belongs to equity holders. Again, yeah, residual claimants. So baki-baki, yeah, balance will go to the equity holders. Equity means ownership. It is not terminal and does not have fixed maturity like bond. So this are in perpetuity. And the most common equity instruments is, of course, the common stock or ordinary shares. Okay. So in short, debt and equity instruments are differentiated by claim and time. So debt is fixed in time. Of course, if you borrow someone money, you have to pay them back, isn't it? It's not like perpetuity. Like if you borrow your friend's money, then you say that okay, it's forever. You're gonna wait until kiamat, end of day, and then you're gonna pay that person. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work like that, right? Debt must be paid in full or within stipulated time, and once it is paid, creditors have no links with them. All right. Again, if you need to borrow money, make sure you borrow from proper channel. Just as a reminder, by the way, don't borrow money from loan sharks. Okay, along, don't borrow. Very dangerous. I'm gonna share a very quick story about Along. When I was transferred in Mentakap, when I was a dealer, stock market dealer, and then I was transferred. I mean, some of you may have heard the word dealer or remiser. Okay, the stock broking company. My manager in Mentakap branch actually borrowed money from Along. Just imagine, he's a manager of a stock broking company. What happens is because he believed that one particular stock will go up in price, so he needs to do leverage, right? We discussed leverage last time as well. He borrowed money in order to do the investment. But he didn't borrow money from banks. Instead, he borrowed money from Along. What happens? The next day is when I came to my office, I asked one of the staff there, where's Mr. something? I don't want to mention his name. And then she told me that he's gone. Okay, what happens is the Along actually locked his house with the very big chains and all those things, and they are really looking for him because he made a loss, and he brought all his family and his children. He ran away from Mentakap. Mentakap is in Pahang, by the way. So he ran away from Mentakap and never to be seen again. Okay, just like that. He's a manager, by the way. Just imagine, manager of a finance company. So it doesn't mean that if you work in the industry, you work in the banking or finance industry, you will not fall into scams or this kind of Along things, right? Because again, don't become tamak. Orang tamak selalu rugi, isn't it? So make sure you guys as well don't borrow from Along. Be very, very careful. You may borrow 100,000 and suddenly you have to pay back 2 million ringgit, for instance. So be extra careful. Okay, this is my own experience, my own boss when I was working. So just imagine that. So be careful. Why are securities so attractive that shareholders are willing to part? Because the capital gain is normally very high. This is what happened to my former boss in Pahang. When it goes public, it provides instant cash. Now again, remember about liquidity. Real estates are not liquid. All right. So whenever you buy or sell shares, it is basically instantaneous. Okay, immediately you're gonna buy and sell. You can do that. Okay, in seconds. But for real estate, you cannot buy and sell houses in seconds, isn't it? It is impossible. It is a very lengthy process. You have to go for the lawyer, legal documents, and so on. It is too long to wait for dividends to give sufficient returns. This is another thing. If you invest because you expect for dividends, dividends are not compulsory, all right? So the companies may pay you or may not. And even if they pay you, maybe semi-annually or annually, it will take some time. Shareholders can easily repurchase the securities, isn't it? Once you sell the shares, let's say you sell the Petronas shares, and suddenly you think, oh, Petronas will go up, and then you can just simply buy it back. No problem, isn't it? So in some cases, of course, the initial public offering can also fall down in prices during the first day. What are the risk elements inherent in the investment in securities, the business risk? Because you don't know, uncertainty related to the business performance. You have the financial risk, which refers to how it is financed, particularly the debt and equity portion. Liquidity risk in terms of the uncertainty introduced by the security market. Now, I mentioned earlier that security investment is much more liquid, obviously, than real estate, but it doesn't mean all securities have the same level of liquidity, isn't it? So some companies, let's say you have 10,000 or 5,000. In Malaysia, we have around 900 or 1,000 companies listed. Not all 1,000 companies are highly liquid. Some of the unpopular companies, maybe no one wants to buy the stocks, isn't it? So it is illiquid. It means that it is difficult for people to buy and sell the stock. And then you have currency risk, especially if you got involved in international security market. Then not only in terms of the up and down prices of the security itself, you also have to look at the what do you call this, the forex, foreign exchange as well. You have country risk in terms of political risk, sudden change in policies of government. This you can see, in terms of the general election as well, whatever happened to the company, sometimes when other parties take over and so on, it will have effect on the stock market too. Whereas for bond risk and rating, you can categorize them as the following. Okay, you have default risk, not paying the company which borrow your money, which means that you are the investor, and then the company which borrow the money from you, and then the company will not be able to pay you the coupon, for example, or the principal back at the end of the maturity period. You have interest rate risk. Now again, if you recall time value of money, there's an inverse relationship, isn't it, between the price or the value, the value now, the present value, and the interest rate. For example, if interest rates goes up, then the price now will go down, isn't it? So this is interest rate risk. You have liquidity risk. This is the same as the stock as well. And you have inflation risk. Now, why? Because inflation will also affect the interest, isn't it? The real interest rate. Okay. So this all plays factor in terms of the bond risk and rating. Now in Malaysia, we have not only Malaysia now, in the US as well, we have the Sharia compliant stocks. Now in Malaysia, we have the Sharia Advisory Council, a specific council. My old friend, Dr. Nordin Ngadimun, was the manager. He was the head of this Sharia Advisory Council. When I did my bachelor degree in the UK, he was doing his PhD in Islamic finance, if I'm not mistaken, in Birmingham University at that time. Yeah. So I met him in the UK when I was doing my bachelor degree. At that time, he was doing his PhD, and then he returned to Malaysia. He became the manager of this committee. So what this advisory council do is they actually identify the universe on core business. Obviously, if it is selling pork, selling alcohol product, those kind of things, obviously it will not be Sharia compliant. Immediately, you're gonna blacklist them, isn't it? And then you have to look into the contribution of interest income from conventional fixed deposits as well as other interest-bearing financial instruments. You have to look at the portion. Okay, if it is too much, then of course it will fall under the non-Sharia compliant. For example, if you know, like Asia, for instance, it is Sharia compliant, even though in Asia itself, if you take the flight, sometimes they serve alcohol drink, isn't it? Because the committee decides that the income from that sales of alcoholic drink is very, very insignificant as compared to the major operation of the business, which is just a flight, which is Sharia compliant in that sense. But of course, some people disagree because Malaysia is in fact quite lenient. My old lecturer, which is a very famous Islamic finance expert in the world, Professor Ishak Bati, when I did my master's, his comment was that the Malaysian structure is quite lenient in terms of formulating the Islamic finance ruling. So in Middle East, for example, they are more strict. Maybe if they sell alcohol, like Asia, even though it's very little, it will be considered as non-Sharia compliant. But in Malaysia, there are certain percentage, okay, where we're going to see after this. So for companies which have both permissible and non-permissible, like I mentioned earlier, such as Asia, public perception of the company must be good, and the core activities are important and considered maslahah, which is the benefit for Muslim Ummah. And the non-permissible ones, such as, again, the alcoholic drink in Asia, must be very small and involve matters such as balwa, common plight, and difficult to avoid. All the rights of non-Muslim community, which means that it is just sold for the non-Muslim, not for the Muslim. So you can see this device Sharia screening methodology in terms of business activity. You see that the revised is 5, 10, 20, and then you have the current Sharia screening methodology. You have the figures, yeah, 5, 10, 20, 25. And then you have the financial ratios benchmark. How much is for the revised as compared to the current one. So these are just some of the description on how they decide whether it is Sharia compliant or not, whether the business activity includes all those things, non-halal food, beverage, tobacco, and so on, all right? So the benchmark is 5%. So if it is less than that, it's fine, technically, okay? The business activity in terms of hotel and resort, share trading, and so on is up to 20%. And the contribution of Sharia non-compliant to the overall profit and revenue will be calculated and compared against the benchmark. So this is how they decide it. In terms of financial ratio, they look into cash over total assets. Again, these are the ratios that they use. Cash that include in conventional accounts and instruments. And because again, yeah, if you see this one, it is 33%. So obviously, if it is more than 33%, but it is Sharia compliant, it's fine, all right? So what they refers to in this table is only those which are conventional cash, okay? Conventional interest. And then the next one is debt over total asset. Again, only include interest-bearing debt, which is the conventional debt or conventional bond, okay? Whereas the Islamic sukuk will not be considered, obviously, because it doesn't matter if it is 33%, if it is sukuk, because it is still halal, okay? So that 33% is for the non-Sharia compliant only. So what happens is that in Malaysia, yeah, I'm saying this in Malaysia, riba and riba-based elements for the company is fine. I'm not saying that the riba is fine. I hope you don't get or don't translate my statement wrongly. Yeah, what I'm saying is that in Malaysia, even though the company has some riba, but if it is less than 33%, the company can still be considered as Sharia compliant, subject to meeting this benchmark or filters. Okay. So obviously, if you see here, you will understand why my old lecturer, Professor Sabati, is quite, I don't want to say circular, it's quite lenient. We see it's quite lenient in terms of adopting Sharia things. Because those who are really Muslims will say up to 33%, that means 1/3, isn't it? It means that 1/3 of the financial ratios is actually riba. How can that be halal? Okay, so that is a question, isn't it? But in Malaysia, the Securities Commission consider it's fine. Again, as long as the business activity and the benchmark of 5% and 20% based on relevant businesses match. Okay, they don't exceed those things. So what happens if there is a change? Let's say a company, if one company, let's say Petronas, just an example, oil, isn't it? Oil and gas, it's halal. Suddenly Petronas decide, oh, okay, gambling and casino market is good. You want to diversify into Petronas Casino. And of course it is haram, right? So what would happen to Petronas then? Okay, so if there is a change from the status from Sharia compliant to non-Sharia, and then you must, or the portfolio manager too, they must sell the securities immediately if it is profitable and take the profit. It can also wait until the price equals the time of change of status or the market price is less than the purchase price. And if while you are waiting to do so, the company is paying, this Petronas is paying any dividend, then you can take it. Then if the company delays selling, any profit must be cleansed. All right. Maybe you go for, you pay for donation and so on. Okay. What do you do? How do you decide which company to invest and so on? There are actually two methods when you consider that the market is not efficient, which is fundamental and technical. Now, if you consider that the market is efficient, which means that prices already reflect all available information, then you can simply use portfolio diversification, which is the third one there, right? So fundamental analysis, if you're familiar with this term, actually use financial ratios, macroeconomic factors, corporate, means that you study the company's fundamentals. Technical analysis, you refer to charts. I'm sure you have seen stock charts, all right? You can, this charts can be based on the prices or also volume data. And then you can also not only look into charts, but also do some mathematical modeling on the historical market data, such as moving average, relative strength index, Bollinger Bands, and so on. Portfolio diversification. Now, how does this relate to your study, your project, isn't it? Your project, the one that I ask you to do, the one that I already shared the book excerpt, as well as the YouTube links. Sorry. So that one, yeah. So in your study, in this particular course, you can ignore the fundamental and technical for your project, of course, not for this study. You may be asked in the quiz. But for your project, you need to focus on the third one, which is the portfolio diversification. And I hope by now you already know how to find the optimization, how to use it, how to find the optimal combination of assets and so on using Microsoft Excel. Right? So what do you do this for? Because you want to invest in a portfolio of assets in order to reduce unsystematic risk. By the way, in the slides, in your e-pembelajaran, you're going to find the slide from Gitman's book as well, from your financial management days, isn't it? About risk and return. That one is also important, not only for this course in terms of your tests and quizzes, but also in your final project and group project, right? It will be the same. So you need to refer to that slide too. I won't go through into too much detail because you have done that in your financial management. But the content in that slide will also be asked in your quiz and test, not only in your project, all right? Again, I don't want to refer it back because, like I said earlier, when you do this course or when you do advanced accounting, you should by then already understand debit and credit, isn't it? Because that is the basic. So that risk and return slide is actually the basic that you need to understand in order to do this course. All right, that's all. I'm glad that we can make it, even though I'm having some problems. So Earlier you mentioned you couldn't hear me properly. Yeah. What do I need to do next? It's fine. I'll just find some ways to fix this. Anyway, do any of you have any question? You can ask if you want to. Any question, guys? Yes?
Question.
No question. I couldn't hear you properly, actually. Was it no question?
No question.
Okay, no question. Okay, it's fine then. All right. I think again, I'm gonna share with you some data for the group and final project, and then you can proceed doing the projects afterwards. Okay, this week I'm gonna send you the data. Your quiz, you want the quiz this week or next week?
Sweet.
This week.
Next week. Next week.
Next week, okay. Yeah, I thought you were laughing now. Ha ha. Even right now you can do it and you're gonna score full mark. So easy. All right, no worries then. Next week then I will share the coverage as well. All right, for that quiz. Okay, till then, have a good day. Take care, and Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.